The supermarket buzzed with weekend life, its aisles packed with families stocking up for the week ahead. Fluorescent lights hummed above, reflecting off polished tiles as carts rattled across the floor. The aroma of freshly baked bread drifted from the bakery, mixing with the faint beeping of scanners at checkout. Yet amid this ordinary Saturday afternoon, something extraordinary and deeply unsettling was about to unfold. A boy no older than 7 shuffled quietly a few steps behind his stepmother. His frame was small, his shoulders slightly hunched, as if the weight of the world pressed upon them. In his hand, he clutched a battered toy car, the paint chipped from years of play. It was more than a toy. It was his only constant companion in a world that often felt cold. His clothes were mismatched, a size too big, his shoes worn at the toes. But it was his eyes that told the true story. Wide, dark, and filled with the quiet ache of a child yearning for kindness, yet too used to disappointment. They turned down an aisle lined with cereal boxes, stacked like colorful towers. The boy trailed closer to the shelves than his stepmother, his small hand brushing lightly against the boxes, as though fascinated by the pictures of cartoon mascots he would never be allowed to bring home. And then, in one brief moment of clumsiness, his shoulder brushed too hard against a display. A single box toppled, then another, until a cascade of cardboard tumbled to the floor in a messy heap. The sound echoed, louder than it should have, silencing the chatter around them. His stepmother spun on her heel, her face hardening instantly. Her voice cut through the air like a whip. "Look what you've done," she snapped, her tone sharp enough to draw stares from strangers. "Can't you do anything right? Always clumsy, always in the way. Useless." The words hit harder than the sound of the boxes hitting the floor. Shoppers who had been passing by paused, their heads turning toward the source of the commotion. A few frowned, others smirked, and whispers began to ripple through the aisle. The boy's small body froze, his trembling hands gripping the toy car so tightly his knuckles turned white. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came. His stepmother's words pressed down on him, heavy and cruel. His cheeks burned as a flush of shame rose to his skin, and he lowered his gaze to the tiles as if trying to disappear into them. The humiliation stung more than any punishment at home, but what happened next would shock everyone watching. The bullies of the moment were not other children, but the whispers of grown adults, the laughter from a pair of teenagers by the freezer section, the chuckle of a man shaking his head as if the boy were nothing but a nuisance. Their reactions turned the air suffocating, thick with judgment and ridicule. The boy's lips quivered as if an apology might escape, though it would never be enough for the woman towering over him. For a moment, time seemed to stretch. The fluorescent lights above flickered faintly, casting harsh shadows across the aisle. The boy bent slowly to pick up one of the boxes, but his stepmother's hand shot out, grabbing his arm roughly and pulling him back. "Don't bother," she hissed. "You just make it worse." Tears welled in his eyes, blurring the shelves into a kaleidoscope of colors he could no longer see. And then, just as his trembling lips parted, ready to whisper a fragile apology, the atmosphere shifted. From a few aisles away, the scrape of a chair echoed louder than the laughter. A figure rose slowly, with purpose, his eyes locked on the scene unraveling before him. His footsteps were steady, measured, cutting through the supermarket noise like a drumbeat. The chatter began to die as attention turned toward this stranger, his presence commanding without a single word. The stepmother noticed him approaching and faltered for just a second, her grip on the boy's arm loosening. The boy, still clutching his toy car, blinked through his tears and looked up. For the first time that afternoon, hope flickered in his wide, fearful eyes. But who was this man, and why did he care? What he was about to say would leave the entire store silent, and the stepmother's cruelty would face a reckoning no one had expected. If you believe no child should ever be humiliated in public, please like this video and share it with others who value kindness. The air inside the supermarket grew heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, but even that sound seemed muted under the weight of silence. Every pair of eyes in the aisle was locked on the figure who had risen from his chair. His footsteps echoed with a slow, steady rhythm, each one louder than the chatter that had filled the store just moments earlier. People shifted uncomfortably, some gripping the handles of their carts, others lowering their heads, sensing something monumental was about to happen. The stranger stopped just a few feet from the trembling boy. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed simply in a dark jacket and worn jeans, but there was something in his presence that commanded the room. Without a word, he crouched down, his movements calm, deliberate, as though he wanted to shrink the space between himself and the child. His hand, firm yet gentle, rested on the boy's small shoulder. The boy flinched at first, unaccustomed to touch that didn't sting or scold, but then his eyes lifted. Wide, glassy, and searching, they met the stranger's gaze, and for the first time that day, maybe even the first time in weeks, he felt seen. The stepmother's expression flickered with irritation, her lips parting to retort, but the stranger's voice cut through the silence before she could speak. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was steady, grounded, and carried the weight of truth. "Children aren't mistakes to be shouted at in front of strangers," he said softly, his words directed not just at her, but at everyone who had watched. They're people, small, fragile, growing people, who deserve dignity, not humiliation. The boy blinked, the words sinking deeper than any insult ever had. Shoppers nearby froze as if unsure whether they were witnessing a confrontation or a lesson written in flesh and blood. A young mother holding her toddler pulled him closer, her eyes widening in recognition of the stranger's words. An older man near the dairy section let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, nodding slowly to himself. But what happened next would shock everyone watching. The stepmother stiffened, her pride swelling like a shield. Her voice trembled as she tried to regain control of the narrative. "You don't know what you're talking about," she snapped, though her eyes betrayed uncertainty. "He's careless, always making trouble. Someone has to teach him." The stranger turned his head slightly, his gaze locking on her with quiet intensity. Teaching a child doesn't mean breaking them," he replied. "It means guiding them, lifting them when they fall, and showing them what love looks like. Shame doesn't teach, it only scars." The words hung in the air like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples through every heart in the room. The boy clutched his toy car tighter, the chipped paint digging into his palm, but for once it didn't matter. The stranger's words built a shield around him, fragile yet powerful, and in that shield he felt something he hadn't in a long time: safety. The onlookers shifted. Some who had chuckled earlier now looked at the floor, their smirks erased by guilt. A middle-aged woman whispered to her friend, "He's right. I shouldn't have laughed." The silence of complicity was breaking, replaced by murmurs of agreement, subtle nods of support. The atmosphere of judgment transformed into one of accountability. But the stepmother faltered. Her fingers trembled around the handle of her purse, her jaw clenched as she tried to hold on to her authority. Yet beneath her mask of control, a crack was forming. The weight of dozens of eyes pressed down on her, forcing her to face the truth of her cruelty. The boy, still fragile but no longer alone, raised his gaze from the tiled floor to the stranger beside him. His eyes shimmered, not just with tears, but with something new: hope. It was faint, flickering like the first light of dawn after a long night, but it was there. And in that fragile spark, the entire mood of the supermarket shifted. The stranger knelt fully now, bringing himself eye to eye with the boy. The sounds of the store faded, the hum of the lights, the rustle of plastic bags, even the rain tapping faintly against the windows. All that remained was the quiet bond between them. He spoke softly, words meant only for the boy, yet heard by everyone. "Kindness, little one, is stronger than cruelty. Never forget that. People may try to make you feel small, but kindness can change the world." The boy's lips quivered, not with apology this time, but with something closer to a smile. His fingers loosened around the toy car, and for the first time, it wasn't just a shield. It was a reminder that he wasn't broken. The stepmother's voice faltered as she tried to respond, but the weight of the crowd's stares silenced her. The boy was no longer invisible, no longer the object of ridicule. He had become the center of a moment that would not be forgotten, and as the stranger's words settled over the room, the tension did not fully dissolve. Instead, it hung suspended in the air, leaving everyone wondering what would happen next. Would the stepmother change? Or would the boy's life be different after this? Or was this only the beginning of a longer battle for his dignity? One thing was certain: courage had been born in that moment because one person chose to stand up. What lesson do you take from this moment? And have you ever witnessed kindness change someone's heart? Share your thoughts in the comments below.